All right, well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So anyone, as they trickle in, feel free to let us know where you're joining from. And otherwise, keep entering any of your comments or questions into the chat as we go. But to get started, we'll do some introductions. So I am Amanda Schneiders. I'm Director of Content and Communications at Chronus. And basically, I focus on building, research and spotlights and storytelling for our customers and the great things that they're doing within their organizations with both mentoring and connection communities, as well as spotlighting our internal and external subject matter experts like we're doing today. And so Jodi is our subject matter expert today. She is our Vice President of Customer Experience. Any of you who've joined some of our webinars in recent times have probably engaged with her. She's been one of our leading experts. And so Jodi leads a team of professionals whose daily mission is to partner with Chronus customers to achieve their mentorship-driven goals. And customers are at the heart of everything the team does. Jodi brings extensive corporate experience and a proven track record in creating and leading successful mentoring programs. She founded MentorStrat after developing and implementing strategies for Fortune 50 mentoring programs, and then actually came on to the Chronus team about almost a year ago, I think we're coming up, to kind of help us lead the customer-facing side of our organization. So she is a renowned mentoring expert at this point in time, and so we're very glad that she's taking time to expand her, extend her knowledge with the rest of us here today. And then before we get started, for any of you who are slightly newer to what Chronus is, I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview before we get started. Chronus is a purpose-driven development platform that offers mentoring and connection communities software to help enterprise organizations combat the disengagement and organizational connection crisis today. We've helped large enterprises, government agencies, nonprofits, and academic institutions do this for the past almost 20 years with a platform that makes customers feel secure, supported, and ready to scale. If at any point you'd like to learn more about what we do at Chronus, you can click on that Talk to Our Experts button in the right-ish upper corner, the blue button there, and get connected to a member of our team. Other than that, quick housekeeping tips. If you have any questions, you can put them into that Q&A section on the far right side of your screen, and we will make sure that they get answered during the Q&A session. If you have a question and you want to put it into the chat, we'll make sure it also gets to the Q&A session. So don't worry, wherever you put it, it'll get to the right place in the right hands. If for whatever reason you have any kind of one-on-one communication, either with Jodi or myself or anyone else, you can use the messages section there. And then finally, the docs section has a set of resources, both for leadership development, succession planning, as well as a next webinar that we have coming up next week, where actually we have healthcare providers talking about how they use mentoring in their organization. So feel free to check all of those out as well. And with all of that, I'm going to now take it over to Jodi, and she will get us started.
Thanks, Amanda. All right. Hey, everyone. We're going to dive into all things mentorship. If you have been on a webinar or at a conference and seen me speak in the past, you know that this is both a job, but also a passion of mine, really, that social learning, helping to connect people, helping to see organizations and individuals grow as a champion for mentoring. I've really had the privilege of, with all the organizations that I've worked with, seeing firsthand that transformative power that mentoring has in shaping careers, in building resilience. And now I'm starting to look at it in terms of how can we leverage mentoring to crack the code to leadership effectiveness. So look, leadership in 2025, not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of things going on in the world today. As everyone knows, we've got unprecedented multi-generational workforce. We have big shifts in some organizations back to in-office dynamics. There are looming succession gaps due to the multi-generational workforce. Not to mention external disruptions that seem to be relentless all day, every day in 2025, and we are only in February. So let's talk a little bit about how I see mentorship evolving given the kind of state of business today. But first, I want to go ahead and do a little poll. So which of the leadership challenges are you currently facing in your organization? What's your biggest concern, I guess? Probably all of the above, but what's on your mind these days? All right. I see results coming in, succession gaps. Yep, that's a big one. Retaining top talent, developing future-ready leaders. I see in the comments, no buy-in. Yeah, a lot of things happening, and none that are uncommon. I see these things at various stages all throughout organizations. So we're going to talk about how we can leverage mentoring to help solve some of the challenges that you're having. So when you think about leadership development of old, the traditional playbook, if you will, for leadership development is wearing thin. Some of the old methods, annual leadership trainings, coursework, those things in and of themselves alone aren't cutting it anymore. If you have workshops or a couple of online courses, those might be helpful, yes. They are not game changers in terms of leadership development anymore. And I want to share a little bit about some of the ineffectiveness of those old models. So those old models rely on a one-size-fits-all approach, really, assuming that the same methods will work for all leaders. And because this mindset doesn't account for diverse challenges, unique strengths of today's leaders, it might meet the need for some, and it might meet the need for all at a minimum level, but to really bring the best out of leaders, we require a different approach. If you are having some of these older style programs in your organization and you're thinking about, okay, what can we do to modernize? How can we use leadership development to meet current challenges? You might be seeing some of these impacts in your organization, things like stagnant growth, like high employee turnover. You might be experiencing ineffective decision-making, or maybe slow decision-making, inability to get to a decision. You might be experiencing negative or decline in your organizational culture. Or you might be seeing that there's those missed opportunities for succession planning, like your pipeline as you're going up in your organization is just getting less and less effective, and that you're missing those opportunities for that succession planning. This is just a lack of readiness for the next generation to retire and have solid people in their place. So what can we do about that? The impact of this in the market is huge. So if you've ever heard the expression, I remember someone telling me pretty early in my career, and it always stuck with me, and I think it's a common, you guys, I'm sure you've heard it. People don't leave companies, they leave leaders. So think about the market in the US, the estimated voluntary turnover, the dollars attributed to voluntary turnover is at $1 trillion per year in the US, much of that attributed to poor leadership. So it's a staggering number. And if we're serious about building resilient leadership pipelines and future-proofing our organization, we need to do something more. We need to do something that's embedded across the employee journey, something that cares for development needs from hire to retire. And that is where mentoring comes in. the time to do this is now. In the midst of all of the chaos, people might be thinking, let's wait for a time for things to settle down before we rethink our approach. But the rethinking our approach now can help things settle down and drive some of that bigger organizational impacts in terms of leadership development. So let me paint a picture for you. Imagine an organization where mentorship, coaching is not just an afterthought or an optional program or something that's seen as just an employee benefit, but that it's a core thread woven throughout the fabric of your employee journey. Picture having that social learning culture that's so ingrained that it touches every critical career milestone. Think about it from onboarding to mid-career growth to succession planning. This is how I think about mentoring. I think about it as not just a nice to have, but really as a strategic imperative. So when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about aligning mentorship and social learning with your leadership competency framework, and then creating your leadership development program around that can help you accelerate leadership readiness by delivering skill building. It can accelerate that readiness by providing personalized real-world guidance that goes beyond like theoretical training or course training, really helping leaders and potential leaders quickly develop those critical competencies like decision-making or strategic thinking or emotional intelligence. And it shortens the time needed to prepare for leadership roles. It helps them develop more high-velocity decision-making and really being more effective earlier as a leader. It also helps develop that ability to get and give and get real-world guidance as you're going through those critical competencies. So mentorship isn't just a benefit for the mentee participant. It's also something that can that the mentees can turn into mentors, and it creates this culture of learning from one another in the organization. Ultimately, the end result is resilient leadership pipelines that foster that continuous development across all levels of your organization. Think about it by, for example, if you're pairing, let's say you're pairing emerging leaders with experienced mentors, ensuring that the critical skills, the institutional knowledge, the leadership behaviors that the organization says are important in terms of success in the organization, that those are consistently developed starting at the beginning of someone's employment in your organization. This approach can create a steady flow of those leaders who are not only equipped to adapt to change, like we're experiencing on the daily here, but also to tackle those complex challenges and step into key roles in terms of your organization as it evolves and all the way up until that succession planning, and to be able to step into those key executive roles. And finally, the integrating mentorship fosters that agility and retention. So not only are you having all of these benefits of mentorship in terms of the people, the effectiveness of leadership development, but you're also driving organizational outcomes. So how does mentorship strategically impact your organization? And that happens in terms of engagement, agility, better decision-making, faster decision-making, and ultimately that turns into retention, which every organization, I think, translates in some way into real dollars. All right. So before we dive in to talk about next, we're going to talk about some of the pillars of effective mentorship. I want to find out from you guys, how does your organization currently leverage mentoring as part of your leadership development? So I think we're going to put a poll up real quick, and you guys can take that so we can hear from you. I'm going to reach over here and plug in my computer, which seems to be not charging. All right. Okay. You have a formal structured mentoring program. Awesome. Hopefully you're doing that on the Chronus platform, even more awesome. You offer informal mentoring opportunities. Very, very common both for both of those things to be true. You're exploring ways to implement mentoring. I love that. Couple votes for you don't currently use mentoring at leadership development. Okay, well, we're going to talk about some different ways that you can get started doing that. I want to cover 3 pillars to what I would call leadership mentoring for leadership effectiveness. And that first one is really around strategic alignment. So mentoring a lot of times in organizations is seen as sort of an employee benefit or a feel-good initiative, but mentoring at the leadership level must be more than a feel-good initiative. It's got to align with the needs of the organization and learners. And so that's kind of the trick, is to figure out what both learners need and then what the organization needs to be successful. One of those ways that you can do that is to tie mentoring directly to the leadership traits and skills that your organization is prioritizing. So if you have a leadership competency framework, or you have defined leadership principles, leveraging those to help mentees get personalized support from a mentor to develop in that areas where gaps might exist for individual learners is one way that you can align mentorship to your leadership development. Strategic alignment also means creating opportunities for mentees to apply learning in real time to solve organizational gaps and challenges. So think about a mentoring pair where, like, an emerging leader is tasked with solving a pressing business challenge, maybe like designing a customer experience initiative. A mentor can guide the mentee through that process, offering them feedback, sharing insights, modeling effective decision making. And this isn't just a learning experience, it's really on the job leadership development that delivers value back to the organization in real time. And so think about it in terms of how can you both get that core learning, get that on the job learning or experiential learning, and then also get that social learning. So really following that 70-20-10 model for effective leadership development. And another way to think about the strategic alignment is by tailoring mentoring programs to address specific organizational goals. So we talked earlier about what are some of the challenges that you're facing as organizations, as an organization today, really creating a mentorship to specifically address those needs can help it be most effective. So if one of your goals, for instance, is to embrace emerging technologies, you might partner senior leaders with emerging leaders, maybe in a reverse mentorship relationship, so that the senior leaders can learn how leveraging AI helps employees navigate their world, right? So we can leverage technology tools instead of being afraid of them or trying to resist integrating them into our organization. So that's just kind of one example of how reverse mentorship can help. Having these insights can help then senior leaders better understand how to make decisions, how to evolve as an organization, enhancing their own decision making and staying ahead of industry trends. Imagine pairing mentoring pairs together where emerging leaders practice real-time problem solving with their mentors. That is an example of strategic alignment in action. Right. The second pillar of success for mentorship in leadership development is to embed mentoring across the employee journey. So too often mentoring is siloed, it's unstructured, and that can limit its impact. But the real magic happens when it is embedded across the entire leadership journey. that can, what it creates doing that, embedding it across the leadership journey and the entire employee journey actually is it creates kind of going from this model where traditional leadership is about an individual focusing on themselves as they're climbing up the ranks of the organization, and kind of evolving to something like this. When you're adding mentorship into the program, the individual is both developing themselves, but they're also mentoring that next generation of leaders. That results in the better outcomes for people and for organizations. And good leaders, I always say good leaders both mentor someone and they have a mentor. So in this healthy leadership pipeline, you should always be leading someone and you should always be following someone. And so it's a drastic difference in everyone out for themselves, climbing up the leadership ladder, to this more collaborative, everyone kind of helping each other be better together. So let's look at mentoring across that journey. In this model, each of these programs are built for a specific reason, to address the needs of the organization and learners at this stage. There are opportunities for other programs other than the ones I'm going to talk about right now, like some specialized skill developing or community building programs. But these are the core mentorship programs that everyone should consider. And if you're a smaller organization, consider these specialized small mentorship programs the same as if you're a large organization. I worked with a company, they had 150 employees and a pretty flat organization they were small. So they had 150 employees and they actually had 3 mentoring programs in their organization. Small, really intentional niche programs built to do a specific thing, solve a specific challenge in their organization. So I'm going to walk you through these just to think about. These are the core ones that you should be thinking about. Mentoring should start for each employee on day one. Starting with a new company can be overwhelming. And if you're thinking about pairing new hires with an onboarding buddy, organizations can accelerate that process of onboarding. They can help employees quickly adapt to their roles, align with the company's culture, shortening that time to value or effectiveness in the role. And that employee then becomes plugged into that social learning network that you've created right from day one. All right, so the next one that you should consider is a career mentoring program. And this is often the one, if an organization is going to have a program, this is often the one that they have. And it's very beneficial for continuous development throughout your career. Career mentoring programs enable employees to own their career, to equip them with the skills, the confidence that they need to succeed in their current roles, while also preparing them for future opportunities, including leadership if they so choose. But this is also a place where individual contributors can get development if they don't have interest in a leadership, being a people leader in the organization. Everyone can kind of establish leadership behaviors and principles within themselves, even if they don't want to be a people leader. And that helps companies be more impactful. If you are an organization that identifies high potential employees as part of your talent review process or some other identification process, then you know that they represent the future of the organization, and targeted mentoring for these individuals can fast track their readiness for leadership roles. If you pair high potential employees with experienced leaders, that provides them with insights into the complexities of leadership. It helps them build their professional networks. It helps them refine those critical skills that they need to take that next step into early people leadership or management roles. Every organization kind of structures these levels differently. But once they become managers, especially those new managers, they really face unique challenges in leading teams, and making mentoring a key component for their development. Providing them with those mentors can really help them not only enhance those leadership capabilities and improve their decision making, but it can help them navigate the complexities of having a team and team dynamics, which is often an overlooked part of leadership development. We're focusing on strategic thinking and decision making, but that building a team dynamic and creating the right culture for your organization is something that's more nuanced, and mentorship can really help be a valuable part of that. And remember, when I'm thinking about mentorship, I'm thinking about it integrated, right? So it is not a standalone. It is integrated with other your traditional learning and with your experiential learning. And what mentorship can do in this area is it can help reinforce those other learning methods, and it also can help people get the personalized attention that they need, because every leader is different. They all come with a different background, different experiences, and they might have different gaps. And so really providing them with that one-on-one mentorship can help them. You can also leverage mentoring, for example, like flash mentoring. That could help managers and leaders get guidance in the moment that matters throughout their leadership journey. So it might be a smaller bit of coaching or mentorship using kind of that flash mentoring model where you just need guidance on one thing. It might be, so for example, if it's your first time doing performance reviews for your team, you might want to work just briefly with another person who has experience doing that to get yourself both comfortable, but also make sure that you're navigating that process in the best way for your team. All right, when you think about the next step, the advanced leadership, leadership in today's evolving business world requires more than that technical expertise. It does demand those higher level advanced leadership competencies like strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, that adaptability. Mentoring programs at this level can help focus on that advanced leadership growth, but also can provide the leaders with that tailored guidance to cultivate those competencies, which then drives your pipeline further. And these people who emerge as top performers from these advanced leadership programs and have these advanced leadership skills developed are really the ones that feed into your executive succession planning pipeline. So executive succession planning really is a long-term investment in your organization's stability and its success, and it's often overlooked. My husband is, he's been with his company for 35 years now. He started right out of college, and he's nearing retirement. And he has told them several times, hey, I'm going to be retiring next year. Hey, I've been here 35 years. I'm going to retire next year. I have a lot of institutional knowledge. I want to pass this on to someone, but they didn't have an executive succession planning program in place to really think about who's that next generation of leaders that he can pass this knowledge off to. And so now they're kind of scrambling to figure out, okay, how do we move forward in this direction? So my advice to you is to try to be as planned in that area as you can before you're kind of caught off guard and you let institutional knowledge walk out the door. I've even seen it effective in some companies where leaders have gone on to retire, but they still provide mentorship to their successee for a number of reasons and for a period of time after that person steps into their executive role. All right, so thinking about the third pillar, when you think about mentoring, it's powerful on its own, but it really can become transformational when you blend it with that traditional and that experiential learning. So this approach enhances the skill development or the competency development, but also fosters that practical application and that continuous growth. So I want to go through a couple ideas on how you might think about integrating mentoring. So combining mentoring with traditional learning programs like workshops, online courses, your leadership development modules, maybe you have a more of a traditional style leadership development program today. Think about those integrating mentorship there. So for instance, maybe mentees could complete an online training session on emotional intelligence or strategic decision making, and then they discuss how to apply these concepts in their roles with their mentors. So it shortens the time between the learning and the application of learning by fostering that planning for applying the learning right after the training session. A lot of times people go to these training sessions, they're seen as mandatory, they go to them, they may get really energized about what they learned there, but it's hard to apply it when you just go back to your desk and then work piles on and then you're busy and you kind of forget about, hey, this is something that I actually need to develop a plan to put into practice. So this approach can help bridge that gap between that learning and that real world application, and make sure that those skills aren't just learned or the knowledge gained, but that they're also practiced and internalized. Another thing you can do to make your leadership development program more impactful is to add elements of experiential learning as well. And so if you have core learning and you have mentorship, being planned about offering experiential learning opportunities can also help make more impactful leadership development. So you're not leaving it up to the participants to decide how they can apply the skill. You're giving them opportunities to do so. This is especially helpful for emerging leaders who might not have the opportunity. They're learning a skill, but they might not have the opportunity to apply it. So here's some ideas. You could create a gig marketplace. This is where employees can explore and select special projects, maybe that align with their development goals. Gigs also could involve things like cross-functional collaboration. They might be leading a small team. They might be tackling some real business challenge in your organization. They're bringing people in from all over to help tackle these as sort of a special project. Pairing these projects with mentoring ensures that the mentees have the guidance and the support as they navigate these growth opportunities for themselves, and it also solidifies that real world application. You could leverage stretch assignments. So these might be things like capstone projects are pretty typical in advanced leadership development. You might create tasks that push employees beyond their comfort zone. They're ideal for experiential learning. By pairing mentees with mentors during these types of assignments, you can provide that safety net of support and a source of constant feedback for mentees as they're completing these assignments. After they complete assignments, helping them go through that structured debrief session with their mentor can identify what worked, what didn't work, what do I need to continue to improve on and put as part of my personal development plan. Another way to integrate mentoring with experiential learning is through job shadowing. So if you pair mentors and mentees in different departments to observe how leadership styles and decision-making across teams and across people varies, you help broaden that mentee's perspective and deepen their understanding of your organizational dynamics. Sorry, my screen's really slow. Another way that you can integrate mentoring into experiential learning is through introducing scenario-based activities. This might be where mentees must solve these real-world business problems and get input from their mentors, but it's in a sort of a scenario-based exercise and not a real-world application. And this is where they could practice before they actually go out and apply things. So, for example, maybe a mentee could work with, in a crisis management scenario, they could draft a strategic plan. They could maybe negotiate a fictional business deal. That way they can kind of do the exercise, and mentors can provide that immediate feedback, guiding those mentees on how to refine their thinking approach. And the last one I want to talk about is really adding peer learning in. So adding peer learning to your leadership development program where mentees or the developing leaders can discuss their experiences in small groups with their peers can also help amplify the impact. If you have mentors who facilitate these discussions, they can ensure that the lessons that individual developing leaders are learning are shared across the organization, and that mentees can see their growth in a broader context when you're connecting them also with their peers for support. Ultimately, the most effective leadership development programs position mentoring as one piece of that larger learning ecosystem. Traditional learning provides the foundation. I think that's pretty common in organizations. Most organizations have that. Experiential learning fosters that application. So it's kind of the next level to think about it. And then mentorship brings that personal guidance and refinement, making a more effective leadership development program. All right, so some of you might be thinking, okay, this is all wonderful. What's the ROI? What's the benefit for the organization? I've got to get stakeholders to be on board with me trying some of these methods. And I want to talk about that. Mentoring isn't just a feel-good initiative. It's really a strategic investment, and it does have measurable returns. So when you think about it in terms of mentoring helping foster that sense of belonging, that professional growth, those are two key factors in retention. So mentorship can drive that retention, and studies show that employees that are engaged in a mentoring program are twice as likely to stay at an organization compared to those that aren't. So think about that, what that means in terms of like lower turnover, reduced hiring cost, a more engaged workforce, better decision making. Integrated leadership, mentorship in leadership development, it doesn't just build those skilled leaders, but it improves that readiness to that high velocity decision making. So there's faster readiness, and once they are leaders, they're more adaptive, and they're collaborating at a higher velocity. Mentored leaders are better equipped to tackle challenges because they're guided through those real life scenarios, and they have the support that they need. They've really learned how to think critically and creatively. I'm going to share a couple examples from work that I've done with organizations over the years to just kind of bring this to life for you. So one company that I worked with had boosted their retention. They're a very large organization of lots of employees. They boosted their retention rate to 96% for people who are in mentoring versus 77% for people who are not, with enrollment rates of over 20,000 employees in various mentorship programs throughout their leadership development pipeline. They have annual cost avoidance in the multi-million dollars in terms of replacement costs, time to value for new employees, et cetera. So it is a very big return on investment for organizations to develop robust mentorship programs. Another organization that I worked with saw a 30% increase in their promotion rates among their employees who participated in their mentorship program compared to those who didn't. So not only are people staying, but they're also moving throughout that pipeline. And that's not just about career growth. Like, it's a direct indicator of that strong leadership pipeline. So again, that mentorship leads to improved engagement, improved retention, improve agility, productivity, and that translates into real dollars. And so our challenge when we're thinking about talking to our executive sponsors about mentorship, or senior leaders about mentorship programs and what we want to do, it's how do we take all of the collective industry research, all of the impacts that we have from current Chronus customers, from organizations that we've worked with, and we help them translate that really into what that tangible ROI is for organizations that can help get that buy-in for your mentorship program in your organization. If you invest in mentoring, you're investing in your people. The ROI, undeniable. But you're cultivating that stronger, more capable leadership pipeline. You're building an organization that's ready to adapt, ready to grow, ready to succeed in the face of challenges or whatever's going to come at us next, all while saving the company, in some cases, millions and millions of dollars. And that's just the power of integrated mentorship for leadership development. And that's why I believe that it's not just a nice to have, it's a new way of thinking about a mentorship integrated in your leadership pipeline. And it's a strategic imperative in the world that we live in today, and all the challenges, kind of circling back to the challenges that we're facing in 2025. Here's my challenge to you. So bring the power of integrated mentorship to work for your organization in your leadership development. And it is perfectly fine, in fact, recommended to start small. Maybe you pilot a manager effectiveness program following the next cohort from your new manager workshops. Maybe you look at the high potential talent that you've identified at the end of 2024 and you bring them into a program. We're working with a client who just kicked off their high potential talent program for people who are identified last in the last talent review process. When you start these programs, measure the impact. Start small, measure impact, build momentum, and then think about scaling. Then think about what's the next program that we need. Because here's the truth. The future of work is here. It's demanding a new way of thinking. It's demanding a new kind of leaders who are agile, empathetic, prepared to guide teams through the complexities that we're all facing. And that means leaders who aren't just developed, but that they're adept at cultivating relationships, shared experiences, intentional growth in both the people that they lead, but also in the next generation of leaders in the organization. And so before I turn it back over to Amanda, I will leave you with this. Leadership effectiveness isn't a puzzle to solve. It is a code to crack. It's about uncovering those intricacies in your culture, in your relationships, your competencies, your experiences, and that can all drive leadership growth. And it's the key that unlocks that full potential of your people in your organization. So go ahead, think about starting small, think about learning from your soft launches or your pilots, and then think about scaling it across your organization. And as always, I am here to connect with people. I am here to answer any questions you have, and here to help you get started in this area for your organization. So thank you so much for hanging in there and listening to all I had to talk about today. I'm going to turn it back over to Amanda.
It's not a puzzle to solve, it's a code to crack. I feel like I need to write that down on a Post-it somewhere. Thank you so much, Jodi. We really appreciate all the insight and all of that in 44 minutes. We're going to jump into Q&A in just a minute. So go ahead and get your questions either submitted in chat or into the Q&A section. We want to make sure we get enough time to answer as many things as you all want to ask. Real quick, before we get started with that, I just wanted to give a little bit more of an overview of what we do at Chronus. Hopefully, Jodi gave you a great kind of foundation for what we focus on. But, just to kind of let you know, at Chronus, we believe organizations only reach their greatest potential when their people do. And that's what this topic was so focused on today. But we do this by helping organizations create connected workplaces where people thrive. And, we put employees in the driver's seat of the development. And we do this by focusing on purpose. In our approach, purpose-driven development is fueled by three key aspects that research says makes employees feel more fulfilled and motivated at work. That's relationships, impact, and growth. And, with purpose at the core, we deliver our approach through the following solutions: through mentoring, through connection communities, and this can be any people networks your org might support, such as affinity groups, business resource groups, employee resource groups, employee networks, whatever you call it, we support those communities, as well as onboarding programs, purpose conversations, and sponsorship programs. And with that, we will get into some Q&A. Okay, I'm going to start off. I see a question right now in the chat with Beth, so I'm going to go with that. How to support overworked and plates overloaded mentors who do not believe they have time to commit to mentoring. a tale as old as time, I think.
It really is. I think part of it's interesting. So I think part of it is that in organizations where this happens, it's that a strong culture of learning from one another isn't established yet. It could be just a beginning thing. And it's how you start to position those success stories that you are hearing, and if you don't have them in your organization, you could. So it could be that that people come from all different experiences, companies, walks of life, and there could be people in your organization whose lives have been very impacted by mentorship. So it's tapping into that and sharing some of those both tangible and intangible results that people have already had. And if you can't find those stories, so I think that storytelling is really critical to start to establish that culture. You can also rely on external stories and your own personal stories, but I think that really so mentorship to me is like a blend between the head and the heart. You have to understand the benefits in terms of like what the research tells us, but then you also have to understand the impacts on real people's lives and be able to tell those stories. So I would try very early on to stick to storytelling, get some champions who've been impacted by mentorship. I did this talk at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and we started off by breaking out. We found a partner in the room, and we talked about how mentorship impacted your life. And it was really interesting. I could see people who didn't know each other come together, and then I thought it was going to be like a 30-second thing. They were just going to each say their thing. But I had to keep calling them back to their seats so we could get started, because the energy in the room just lit up, and I could see people's body language and facial expressions becoming more and more animated as they were talking about how and the question was simply how has mentorship impacted you? And these are all leaders in the room, right? And so I think tapping into that storytelling can be really powerful.
I would definitely double down on everything that Jodi said, because I think even when people get a little sense of that, even that 30 seconds or whatever it might be, people start to get that kind of excitement, that energy that kind of pulsates. But you need someone else to kind of tell you or remind you, or, kind of show you the way of what that can really provide for you for mentoring in your organization, as well as the kind of, it needs to be seen as a priority, or it needs to be felt as a necessity within the organization, both from the top down and the bottom up, I think, in a lot of ways. We had another question come in about how would you suggest measuring leadership readiness?
I think leadership readiness is a couple of different ways, right? So there's the skills and competencies that the organization says is important as part of their leadership behaviors or principles. And it's part, do people display or exhibit those? And your organization might have a way of measuring those, either through behavioral assessments, through qualitative feedback. But I think it's also past that. It's also, is that person, is that leader both giving back to the organization in terms of, are they leading someone else? Are they developing someone else? So I think a lot of us as leaders get stuck in the trap of just managing the day-to-day and not inspiring the next generation, or coaching or mentoring the next generation of leaders, right? So to me, effective leadership is measured by, are you both exhibiting those things, but are you also helping someone else, in mentoring someone else or coaching someone else to become a leader? When I first started very early on in my career, it was sort of if someone wanted to advance in the organization, it was sort of threatening to the person who was leading that person. Like, it was like, oh, they're coming for my job kind of mentality, right? And we know now that, obviously that's a kind of stifling mentality to have. And so for me, that wasn't effective leadership. To me, effective leadership would be when I express to my leader, hey, I want to do this or that in my career, that they're helping facilitate that for me. And it's not seen as kind of a threatening thing. I think the other thing, the kind of final thing I'll say is, there is something to be said for just agility in decision making, and decision making is really important, and it can get people really bogged down. And I think ineffective leaders don't have the ability to make a kind of high velocity, quick decisions. And so I think that agility and that decision making is important for effective leadership. We have a mantra on our team that we developed like a year ago, and it was that we're going to fail forward, we're going to fail fast, and we're going to learn by doing. And that allows giving my team that kind of mentality, helps them to practice, helps them to take risks and to take challenges, and to not be afraid to try something, because it could fail, it could need to be adjusted, but could be wildly successful too, right? And at the end of the day, we're all just trying to do the best that we can here.
Yeah, I think this next question kind of adds on to that a little bit. Pearl was wondering how mentoring can be correlated or tied to various leadership styles.
Yeah, I think, so again, kind of going back to like old school leadership, it used to be that the mentality was a leader, in order to develop the next generation of leaders, a leader would find someone that reminds them of themselves, take them under their wing, develop them to be exactly like them. And that's how we looked for people. I remember doing it myself. Oh, Jodi, why do you want to hire this person? Well, she reminds me of me and I'm pretty awesome. So like, she's going to, and we know now that effective leadership requires like this diversity of thought, diversity of experience. So mentorship is more about helping someone be the best version of themselves versus bringing someone up in your own image. And I think going back to the original question, mentoring is a tool that can help. We need all the leadership styles. We need the transformational, we need the transactional, we need servant leadership, all of those things, but it's helping the person, not only the mentee, not only be the best version of themselves in their dominant style of leadership, but also kind of round out their offering. Some of the better leaders can flex and adjust and know when to call on certain strengths that they might have. So it's both that well-roundedness, but it's also taking that style of leadership that's dominant for them and making sure that they're leveraging their strengths, right?
Right, yeah. There was another question about, can you comment on group mentorship by co-mentors, which might be great to leverage mentor scarcity?
Yes. Group mentorship is definitely a structure that we see impactful. It is sometimes done because there is mentor scarcity. There just aren't enough mentors. It's sometimes done intentionally when there are enough mentors to get that group think kind of going. So it really depends on what the goals of your program are. When we help people design programs, we really look at the goals and objectives, who the ideal mentor and mentee is, in your program to meet whatever the objectives that you set are. And then we also do an organizational analysis. How many of those people do you have? And so before we decide on whether a program is going to be one-on-one or group or circles or rotational, we really look at your numbers. We kind of help you play the number game, but also not for just now, but also for the future, right? Because someone talked about mentorship, like they decline over time because people just get fatigued with doing it all the time, right? And so we're thinking about, okay, what's going to be effective now, but also what's going to be effective in the future. I love the co-mentor option as well, especially if you pair an experienced with a first-time mentor. It can really help them and you could do that in what I would say would be a more traditional relationship, one-on-one, but with two mentors. So one's learning, or you could do it in that group structure where you have co-mentors. Another one to consider is, especially as you get up in the leadership ranks, is rotational group mentoring. So instead of the same group coming together with the same mentor, the mentors actually rotate, and they're helping these groups of people learn whatever their expertise is in the space, right? And so you're rotating the mentors around to give people a more breadth of learning. So a lot of different options for structures to help make your program successful.
Yeah, I really like the idea of that rotational mentorship. That's one I haven't really heard of in the past. So that's a new idea to kind of seed in if you are looking for a little bit more variety in it. Obviously, we're talking about, leadership effectiveness. So we can't really talk about it without talking about what role senior leaders play in this kind of programming we're talking about, and with mentoring especially. Like, how do you, I know Felicia mentioned having no buy-in for mentoring being a problem in the organization. How do you, solicit that buy-in and go about gaining? I know you've mentioned it already at this point, but kind of how do you think about it for this audience today?
Yeah. Well, first, wait, did I lose you guys? Oh,
I hear you.
You hear me? Okay, something's going on with my screens. I can't see anybody anymore, but as long as you can hear me. First, I will say that the lack of senior leadership buy-in to mentorship or any social learning programs is one of the top reasons that they fail. So it is important to do the work to make sure that you have both buy-in from a theoretical perspective. Yes, I support you doing this program, but also buy-in from a participation and a promotion, right? And so some of it is telling the story in terms of senior leaders. They care about ROI. They care about profitability. Yes, they care about people, but at the end of the day, they're held accountable for the profitability of the organization, right? And so if you're trying to present your program to the very senior leadership, you're going to need to do both. You're going to need to tell the story in terms of yes, the people, but also the real tangible benefits to the organization. So when you're thinking about your business case, a lot of times people will go into wanting to create mentorship programs and not think about building a business case. So I think a business case is really important, and using kind of that traditional business case logic is very important. I also think that you can, if you have if you're a large organization, you have a lot of different stakeholders, or even if you're small, but you have some detractors and you have some promoters, would be to just do a stakeholder analysis. So it's like going out and talking to each of the stakeholders. You can find out something, and then kind of bucketing them your people who are your promoters of mentoring. So they're engaged, they're proponents of mentoring, they're engaged, they're excited about it, they participate, but they're also highly influential in your organization, is your ideal person to help you champion your program, right? And you're going to want to deal with them in a different way than you deal with the other kind of situation. So low, you might have someone who's a champion, but they're low influencer. That's different. It's also different if they're a detractor and they're a high influencer, right? And so there's various different strategies that you can use, but it's important to find out where your leadership team falls in, and get those highly influential champions on your side early.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think, obviously surveying the leadership team that you have in your organization, who can be those promoters, being aware of those detractors. And I also think being aware of other people who just have influence in your organization that may not be the top leaders. There are people in your orgs who either people listen to, who are, vocal, other people like that, where you can also find out who might be a great champion for your program. So I know we are at time, and I think we've made it through just about all the questions. So we want to make sure that you all can get back to your day, but we appreciate you spending time with us. Thank you so much, Jodi, for sharing all your information. If you want to get connected to Jodi, and you can find her on LinkedIn. We have the link up here. Also, if you're interested in learning more about Chronus and how we help mentoring programs and connection communities, go ahead and click Talk to Our Experts, or fill out the survey that you all have probably received, and we'll be in touch. But we appreciate you all spending some time with us, and hope you have a great rest of your day.